In just over 2 months, a D&D supplement that I wrote will be for sale in this store, and stores like it all over. Barnes & Noble, Target, Indigo for the Canadians.
This is where it'll live. It's part of this Game Masters book series.
I'm competing with, like, real stuff, you know? But how cool would it be if I went in and something that I wrote was on the big table up front?
I wrote a deck of cards to help make your D&D games more epic, and it's gonna be in real, normal people stores, like Barnes & Noble. So next time you walk into a Target to buy batteries and then black out and come to in the parking lot with $200 worth of home goods, this might be one of your poor financial decisions. But I'm not here to brag. Well, I'm kind of here to brag, but I'm mostly here to explain what this deck is and how it actually works to make your players feel like heroes and make your games feel dramatic and epic. I've been playing D&D for around 6 years now, but I came to tabletop gaming from a background as both a fiction writer and a lifelong bookworm. One of the staple lessons that you learn in writing workshops is that in order for a reader to invest emotionally in the story, it needs to have stakes, or a really hot love interest, if book talk is anything to go by. I carry that same lesson into tabletop games. The lesson about stakes, I mean. The highs should be high, the lows should be low. When you're stepping into a world of epic adventures, you want your triumphs to feel powerful and glorious. And in order for those triumphs to feel meaningful, there also need to be real consequences for failure. I find, especially once you reach higher tiers of play, that rewards and punishments both can easily start to feel underwhelming. You reach a point where magic items just don't carry the same excitement as they used to, and where any punishment short of death is either trivial or tedious. Enter the Game Master's deck of Boons and Banes. I wrote this deck as a tool to help you provide big, dynamic experiences for your players, good and bad. Here's how it works. It's a deck of 40 cards, 20 boons and 20 banes. Boons are rewards that give your player characters new abilities, and banes are punishments that impose limitations on them. All the cards have the same back, so you can use them as a deck for the purpose of random draws if you want to. On the front, there's a beautiful piece of original art by Tim Foley, who absolutely killed it, by the way, and the name of the boon or bane. All the actual information about each card is found in the companion book. This is so that you can actually use the physical cards at the table without spoiling any information that you want to keep secret from players. So the cards are player facing and the guidebook is GM facing. Each card has 3 elements: effects, scaling tips, and side quests. The effects include a flavor description of the boon or bane and also the mechanics of how it works in gameplay. Scaling tips suggest how to reduce the impact of each card if your player characters are below level 10, since as written, these are intended for higher level play. And each card includes 2 related side quests that you might decide to use in order to weave the boon or bane into your narrative. For boons, the side quests are implied to happen before the boon is granted, so you do the quest and are rewarded with the boon. For banes, the side quests are undertaken to remove the bane, so you get the bane and then do the side quest to get rid of it. I feel like this will make more sense in the context of an actual card, so let me show you an example. This is a boon called Arcane Absorber. First, we get a little flavor description of the character developing a hunger for the arcane. You can now absorb magic used against you and use it for your own purposes. Then we get into the mechanics. Basically, if somebody targets you with a spell and hits, you can use your reaction a few times per long rest to nullify the effects of the spell and gain temporary hit points. The higher the spell level that targeted you, the more temp HP you get. You can either use those as temp HP, allowing them to pad out your hit point total, or you can choose to release the stored magical energy as an explosive burst. All the specific details about this card are written out in the guidebook, by the way. Game Masters don't have to do any homebrewing. The mechanics are ready to use. But if your players are below level 10, or if you just want to make the boon less powerful, there's a suggestion for how to scale the effect down. In this case, by reducing the number of temp HP granted by this ability. Finally, there are 2 side quest suggestions. These are very loose, just a starting point for GMs. For example, one of the Arcane Absorber quests begins with the PC being hunted by a Spirit Naga. I learned about Spirit Nagas while writing this card. They're basically evil, immortal snake wizards. And no, you can't use that as a band name. I'm using that as a band name. If you track the Spirit Naga to its lair and defeat it, you're granted the Arcane Absorber boon. Or at least that's one way you could use this card. But this is meant to be a flexible tool, so I encourage you to use them however suits your game. For example, maybe your wizard decides to ask for help from their old mentor before a major battle. Their mentor was once an immensely powerful mage, but they're growing too old to join the party on a dangerous adventure. adventure. So instead, they help by performing an arduous ritual to grant the power of the arcane absorber to their student. Or maybe your party is exploring a ruin that was once a magical laboratory, and one PC in particular decides to make a risky move and test out one of the mysterious arcane devices on themselves. Will they be rewarded for taking a chance, or will they regret it? You could take the arcane absorber boon and the arcane allergy bane, have the player draw at random, and let fate decide. These are all thematic examples where you're matching the theme of the card to the story of the game. But of course, some random chance can be a lot of fun too. Maybe your cleric has completed a hugely difficult mission at the behest of their deity, and now it's time for their divine reward. So you fan out the entire set of 20 boons and let them draw one at random. You can have as much or as little control as you feel comfortable with. Now let's look at an example of a Bane card. These cards contain the same information as boon cards, effects, scaling tips, and side quests, but there are some slight differences in how they're used, and in how likely your players are to say yes when you ask them to drive you to the airport next week. This Bane is called Unseen Pursuer. First, the flavor. The character is suddenly convinced that they're being followed. They keep catching sight of an indistinct figure out of the corner of their eye, but can never quite pin it down. Oh, Ginny, where do you get inspiration for these cards? I have anxiety, thanks for asking. Then we go over the mechanics. This fear keeps them up at night, forcing them to make a con save with every long rest or toss and turn all night, taking a level of exhaustion. When they go into combat, they can practically feel the unseen pursuer breathing down their neck. They have to save against being shaken by its presence, and if they fail, a 1d6 penalty is applied to their attacks and saves. To scale this card, you just tweak the saving throw DCs. Now, the side quests are where the biggest differences are between boon and bane cards. Let's be honest, these banes are pretty nasty. You don't want to play with these for very long. The quest hooks are the player's way out. Complete the quest to eliminate the bane. The quest hooks on the boon cards are more or less interchangeable, just two different options, so game masters can pick what appeals to them. But the quest hooks on the bane cards fall into two distinct categories. One is a way to end the bane, and the other is a way to transfer it to a different target. There's two reasons I think this is fun. First, while a bane is a limitation for the player, allowing them to use it against their enemies turns it into a tool, which I think is neat. And second, if your table enjoys a little moral quandary, this will introduce one. Not only is it crappy to saddle someone with one of these banes, but the process of transferring it is something that should feel kind of bad to do. In this case, the transfer quest requires you to place a specific item near where the target sleeps and then prevent them from sleeping for 3 straight days. Like, that's basically torture. And also that's why I'm pretty sure human babies are chaotic evil. I'm making a PowerPoint, we'll talk about it later. But if that kind of move isn't right for your table, you can always just stick to the side quest that eliminates the bane completely. In this case, you can eliminate the unseen pursuer by making contact with it and learning that it was once a living person affected by this same bane. If you can track down the body and give it a proper burial, it will leave you alone. Again, that's one way you can use this card, but it could be used in a million other ways too. Like maybe you already have a player character in your game who is being tracked or hunted by a powerful being. This bane might be the escalation of that feeling of being hunted to create urgency or ramp up the drama before a final confrontation. Or maybe your players were poking around in a dungeon or a ruin and one of them threw caution to the wind and opened the wrong door or looked into the wrong enchanted mirror, releasing some trapped spirit that now haunts them. Basically, I've provided the card's effects, but you're the one who gets to decide when and where and how to apply them. I could recite a laundry list of ideas on how these can be used. A warlock patron's reward after completing a request, a mysterious vendor selling a random card draw, divine retribution for performing a deeply evil act. There's no right or wrong way to use these cards. They're for you. Do whatever you want with them. But Ginny, you might be asking, I'm afraid that slapping an individual player with a bane is gonna make them feel unfairly targeted. Or on the flip side, maybe granting one a boon is gonna feel like favoritism to the other players. What a great question. You are so smart and so nice, and if you don't mind me saying, you have really good taste in YouTube channels. And I think you're absolutely right to consider how these kinds of powerful abilities or punishments are going to feel when pointed at just one character in a larger party. My best tip, don't make it a surprise. Whether it's a boon or a bane, players should know that something big is at stake, and then they should make the decision of whether or not to engage with it. If your party travels deep into an ancient cursed tomb, past warnings written in blood blood and deadly traps, and the barbarian still decides to sit down on the throne made of skulls, I am of the opinion that a Bane is fair game at that point. They had every indication that they were messing with something dangerous, and they decided to be reckless with it. Likewise, if your cleric has been dedicated to their deity's cause even when the rest of the party had their heads turned by big bags of gold or the promise of power, it will feel fair for that dedication to be rewarded with a divine gift. In short, either a big reward or a big punishment needs to feel justified in the context of the story, and this is true with or without the deck of boons and banes. Now, as with any rule, once you know it, you can break it. I am not by any means saying that a boon or bane card can never work well as a complete surprise. I'm just saying you need to read the room. In my home game right now, my player character Penelope is actively trying to break her father out of a deal with a demon lord. She's already been warned in a dream that the demon lord is aware of her meddling. This would be a great opportunity for a bane. If I insist on continuing to defy this immensely powerful and dangerous being, there should be real consequences for that. But it's also worth noting that I am that kind of player, the kind who enjoys the drama of the negative as much as the positive. I've always expressed this to my game masters. I'm the player that's like, come on, f me up, do it. I mean, that's why I always carry a sword, in case I need to make any bad decisions. But not everyone is like that, so some of this is also just about communicating and understanding what your players want. This deck is a tool, and like any tool, it can be misused. When in doubt, just ask your players how they feel. It really is that easy. Okay, Ginny, you might be saying, I'm convinced. I'm gonna go to Target right now and buy this deck, and also $150 worth of storage bins and fun throw pillows. Well, unfortunately, it is not at Target yet because it doesn't come out until October 1st. It is, however, available for pre-order. I'm gonna be totally real with you, there is no incentive for you to pre-order. It's not cheaper, you don't get any bonus items, there's no benefit that you get from ordering it now versus just picking it up in October. In fact, if you aren't sure you even want it, you might be better served by waiting until it's out and reading reviews and seeing what people think of it. Of course, I think it's great, I wrote it, but I could be wrong, it could be terrible. There's really only one reason to pre-order the deck, and that is generosity. You want to support me as a game writer. With big stores like Target and Barnes & Noble, pre-orders are data that tell them how popular the item is going to be. If an item gets a lot of pre-orders, they might be like, oh, this item is popular, we should order a lot of them, and maybe shelve them in a prominent place. And the difference between this deck being stocked on a shelf versus, say, on an end cap could be a difference of thousands of sales, especially considering how many of these stores exist across the US. And for smaller stores like your local game store, pre-orders might actually be the determining factor of whether or not they stock this item at all. I know that within the tabletop gaming space, I have some name recognition, I'm considered something of a big fish, but within the world of the stuff that's stocked at Target, I am the smallest possible fish. Oh, that's way better than Evil Immortal Snake Wizards. I'm changing my band name. I will put a link in the description where you can pre-order the deck from major sellers in the US and Canada. I have also heard from you guys that a lot of your local game stores and bookstores have this item available for pre-order, so it's worth a quick search, especially if you're outside the US. But also, once the deck is officially out, I will stock it in my own shop, and I ship basically everywhere. So if you can't find it locally, don't panic, you'll just need to wait until it comes out in October, and then you can buy it straight from me. Okay, if you watched all the way through, you are wonderful and I appreciate you. As a reward, here is my favorite card. It's a boon called Fae Favorite, and you get a little pixie friend who hangs out with you. This card sprang directly from the deepest recesses of my heart, and I hope you like it.